themselves. All right, first up, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce the creator of Infinity Train, Mr. Owen Dennis. Next up, the supervising producer of Infinity Train, Miss Madeline Queripel. And finally, our color designer, is that your official title? Color Supervisor, Melissa King. And I'm just gonna be holding my tiny mic like a jelly bean up to my mouth the entire time because I want everybody to hear me. All right, thank you so much to everybody who is here in person, and thank you to everybody who is on Zoom for attending. Owen is eating his mask and making sure it looks like the mouth is moving on the mask to be fun. So thank you so much for coming, everybody. I am really just gonna jump right into everybody kind of talking about themselves and their background in education. So Owen, do you want to say what your education in art was before you started working in the industry?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So first off, my education is School of Hard Knocks. Why don't you try it out? I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design with Maddie. Maddie's a year behind me. I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Originally, I got really into animation and 3D animation and level design and game design and things like that when I was a teenager. And then I was sort of decided to leave my hometown because there wasn't a lot of opportunity for 3D animation in rural Minnesota in 2005. So I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design and then studied animation there, and eventually didn't finish school to go to do animation. I went and became an English teacher in China for a couple of years, and then I started working on regular show, and then with Maddie, and then Infinity Train happened. And that's that's about 15 years of time elapsed into that sentence or two.
Cool. Maddie, how about you? What's your education?
I don't know if you've heard of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, but it happens I went there. Yeah, growing up, I was just a huge fan of anime and manga, and I actually went for comic art. That's my main degree, but I ended up applying for a job on regular show. Don't know if you've heard of that either. Little known show. Yeah, I worked on that with Owen, and I was on it until the end. I also did some stuff on Close Enough, but yeah, MCAT is my main educational experience in art. But yeah, just drew all the time before then, and did it for a job after. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Melissa, what is your art education history?
So I went to San Jose State. Very good art college for anyone who's looking to go to college. It's very affordable and a great program, good art community, so I highly recommend it. And then, yeah, after college, I worked in games for a bit, mostly social and indie games, and then worked my way over into TV, where I've just done a bunch of environment art, but I mostly like working with color and light.
Yeah, because you were the background painter on the show when you first started.
Yeah, I was a background painter for books 1 and 2, and then was the color supervisor for 3 and 4.
Yes, they are. Backgrounds
Thank you.
Great. So I know that Owen and Maddie, you both worked as storyboard artists on regular show, and that entails actually drawing the characters and generally the scenes of the show from either the script or the outline that you get. Do you want to talk a little bit about that process, like what your day-to-day was as a storyboard artist, because that also is basically what it was on Infinity Train?
Sure.
Pretty close.
Regular show is storyboard driven, so you get an outline, and it's usually just about 3 pages. Generally, Mordecai and Rigby need $200 to do whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
It's always $200. I
they
don't know.
broke something, and it just so happens that it costs $200 exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a chili contest that the prize is
There's always something.
$200.
Yeah, but it's really fun to do storyboard driven, at least on regular show and a lot of other shows. At Cartoon Network gives 2 people on a board team, and you'd have the handout with the creators and the writers, and then you would go off and write it for a couple days and split it up however you'd like, and then pitch it a couple times. And at the end, usually you do a crew pitch, which was a lot of fun. You get to show off all your hard work and actually hear more and more laughs in the room, so you don't feel crazy.
Yeah.
You don't feel like,
You do a
oh,
lot
I
of
didn't make
questioning.
anything funny, it turns
A
out.
lot of questioning on like, is this funny? I don't know. And you
Yeah.
just keep going and hoping that, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Obviously, Infinity Train was a bit different. Scripts written by Lindsay and Justin and Alex. All great job, guys.
Thank you.
But yeah, so storyboards were, and they're a lot more continuity focused. So that took
Yeah.
a lot of focus and energy. But I think all the boarders really knocked it out of the park on
Yeah.
that.
So like one of the reasons we switched to script driven on Infinity Train versus regular show. Regular show was, as Maddie said, all board driven. So it's like the outline, and then the board artists actually write and draw a lot of it. But the reason that we switched to script driven for Infinity Train was because it was such a continuity focused thing that it felt like we had to have all the writing like exactly correct the whole
Yeah.
way through. Because
There's
if you
just
miss like
a
one
lot
small
To
it's a
keep
lot.
track of, yeah.
Because if you miss one small thing and then like 6 episodes later, you're like, oh, we never told that storyboard team to include this one thing.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes a big mess and it's really hard. So
Yeah, so
when it's script driven,
the scripts,
and I
but yeah.
think it was like the first script driven show in Cartoon Network for like 10 years or something crazy like that.
Could be, yeah.
It was a
I'd
really
have
long
to check
time.
to be sure, but yeah, most of the ones at the time were
So everybody was
storyboard.
kind of like not sure how to do it, which is weird to be in an industry where we're like, we don't know how to make scripts.
Well, yeah, they both have different strengths and weaknesses, but
Yeah.
I really enjoyed doing both because
Yeah.
I also was lucky enough to board an episode in book 2, The Lucky Cat Car with Ryan Pequin, which was a lot of fun to go back to.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm saying, yeah, like, yeah, it was a lot of fun for you
yeah,
to go back to that.
yeah, like Owen.
Wow, yeah. Mhm, yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I think that's about it.
Cool. Well, Melissa, when an episode would get to you, when you would get your work to be done on the show, I, by that point, knew next to nothing about how the show was made. Like truly, the writers would sit in on storyboard pitches and we would give notes to make sure that the boards lined up with what we wrote, make sure that nothing contradicted, like you guys were talking about, any like thing that we were going to set up in the future. So we had to make sure it wasn't like stepping on the toes of the serialized story, so to speak, or the lore. But once it left the storyboard pitch, I have no idea what anyone on the show did. So I would love to hear about, like, by the time it got to you, because there are prop designers and character designers and storyboard revisionists and storyboard supervisors, what did a board look like by the time it got to you?
It looked great.
Great.
Like,
So next
all
question.
that hard work was done. And it was this beautiful board that then we got to make look good visually. So we kind of started with doing a breakdown of it, and we'd all look through the boards together and like break down, okay, what backgrounds do we need to do? What props do we need to do? What like palettes are the characters going to be walking in and out of? Is there like a nighttime scene and a daytime scene? And what effects are going to happen? And so we'd all call all those out in a meeting, and then from then on, it's just making them. So it starts with design, which is the black and white, and the backgrounds are first, right? Yes.
Yes.
And then all the props and effects and characters get made to work on top of the backgrounds, and then it goes into color, and we color the backgrounds, and then we color all the props and characters and effects. So like through that order, it hopefully like comes together nice and cohesively. Yeah,
Cool.
Lots of planning ahead to make
Yeah.
sure.
It's a lot of,
What was an example of an effect on the show?
Water splash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
see, like, I'm like, what's a what?
It's a hard thing to talk
Fire.
about without showing it exactly, because sometimes it's
It
sort
can
of
be a
like-
lot of different things.
It's a lot of different
Count.
things. It's basically anytime you see in a 2D animated thing, anytime someone just touches something else, that becomes something that someone has to design and make into a brand new prop or effect or whatever. Anytime someone touches something else, it goes behind something else, like moves a rock, like
Yeah, like
anything.
things like impact flashes or dust clouds or
I mean, it's
lightning, stuff like that.
like you guys have all seen like Tom and Jerry or something where like, oh, that's the book that they're gonna pick up. Like it's designing all those little things, and then now it's even slightly easier because you can actually eyedrop colors versus then.
You guys would have what you would call, I think, like design parties or art parties for the show. Can you talk about what that was like? Because that's a brainstorming session, right? That like everybody in the art production would get involved with. And I would feel left out of because it sounded like you guys were having like pizza
Yeah.
and sodas. It's like a party. And then I'd sit in my cubicle and had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. I think we have to credit our producer, Keith, for the actual title of Party. I think we're trying to zhuzh it up, trying to make it really sound fantastic. But yeah, I think it's a lot of what Melissa already talked about of just like going through the board and picking out what things needed to be designed and how they needed to be designed.
Real quick, just because it is inevitably drawing attention, if everyone could be an adult on the Zoom right now. This is not Twitter. This is not the Infinity Train Discord. This is I am almost 40, and I don't need to see that. Thank you. Please respect that there's an audience listening to these amazing art questions, and then there's just PMask over and over in the flippin' chat. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Yeah, so design parties are pretty cool. Like,
All right. While poor beleaguered Ben tries to figure this out, if everyone in the audience could just look away from the chat and zoom in your mind off the Zoom and on the answers. So an art party.
yeah, like I said, a lot of what Melissa already talked about, going through boards and making sure that we have everything figured out for who has to do what and what part of the process and how it all hooks up to previous episodes and future episodes. Hopefully sometimes how we can alleviate some work by making things reusable for future things. Hopefully, at least a little.
Because sometimes another thing that we would do at the art parties and stuff is we were just trying to make it so that like people had like some input on what the final product was going to be. Because often what can happen is you'll have storyboard artists be like, this is going to be the character design and this is going to be the background, here it is, blah. And then when it finally gets to...
Give me a sec.
Genius.
We are free from the constant social commentary of modern life. Finally.
And then when it finally gets to the background artists and the background and the designers and all those sorts of people, often they feel like they don't get as much input on what the final design would be anyway, because the storyboard artists... Oh, shit.
Well, hooray! Something's fine. Someone gave a thumbs
There
up.
were
somewhere.
thumbs up given, so don't worry. That means it's
How
fine.
dare you mute the chat?
All right, Lindsay, you got another question? Maybe.
The ghost of the chat reached out and knocked something over in the back of the gallery. The ghost of PMask. So you would all get a script or even just you would know what the characters were going to be for that season. And I imagine that this was a somewhat more challenging show than other shows because the characters changed every season. There were maybe like 1 to 5 different new environments for every episode.
One of the worst things you can do in any animated television show is have every episode take place in a new location. It is the
Worse for production.
Worse for production. It is the worst thing you can do to everyone on your staff because there's never any break. There's never any like, oh, we already drew that. We could just use that again. You never get to do that. And so you'll notice as the seasons go on, they have a couple of more episodes where it's like, maybe we have 2 episodes that take place in one location here and there.
Melissa, confirm, deny?
And confirm. Yes. It's really fun. It keeps you from being bored, which is, it's important. Yeah. Some shows you're painting the same bedroom all the time. But yeah, it's a lot of work, especially on a schedule. Yeah.
There's a reason that animated shows always have like the tree house that they go back to, the house that they go back to, the other house that they go back to. You can just like, there's always a house or a living room or something you can go back to specifically because it's so difficult.
That's called reuse.
Yeah.
Reuse.
We at least had the apocalyptic landscape that we could rely on.
When like the outside of the train, we're like, oh, we can just keep having more stuff take place on the outside of the train, and then it makes things easier. It's better that way. Or we'll have an episode that just takes place in a white room with a frog in it. Toad.
Although
that was narratively important. That's crucial to the design.
That episode was so easy to paint that we freelanced it. No one in-house got to have a break.
Great. Love it.
I actually did the backgrounds for the Toad part. So on that subject, were there any episodes or cards that you're particularly proud of, or are there any episodes or cards where you wish you had more time to work on it? I won't say not proud of, and I won't say didn't like, but let's say you wish you had more time.
That's you, Melissa. I know the answer is going to be all of them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's all of them. No, there's a lot of them to be proud of, even though they were hard. Episode 9 in book 3 with all the montage, Grace and Simon. Yeah, what is that episode called?
Some memory card. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I had it, I lost
They
it.
know.
Origami card?
Origami
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot to plan.
12 years.
But yeah, like the more work you put into something, I think the more gratifying it is when it comes out nicely. Or of course the split screen episode, which that was a lot. But I think it came together well.
I remember one time you were painting, it was the episode where MT's out in the desert, Lake is out in the desert, and she's surrounded by the Alan Dracula antler ball.
Yeah.
And you were like painting each individual antler thing. I remember
that was fun though.
I remember the time you were just
perhaps?
like, yeah, I like it. It sucks. It's only gonna be on screen for a couple seconds probably. And I was like, no, they're gonna spend like a third of the episode in here. And you're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, as a background painter, you never quite know how long your work is going to be on screen for. Sometimes it's just, you don't even see it, like half a second. Sometimes it's like 3 seconds, and that's nice.
Yeah. But it sounds like you would give just as much time to every moment of every episode. If you were painting tiny little antlers. See, this is the kind of thing that as writers, we're like, and then there's like an antler ball. Anyway, goodbye. And now I never have to put that into action. And then there's just this whole team of geniuses at work making sure that it looks amazing. Like how long would it take you to finish the backgrounds on an average episode of the show?
So the whole team has 2 weeks. But that's very, like, sometimes it's a lot longer. Sometimes we have to freelance out a bunch of it, so it's not all in-house. I'd say on average, each painter maybe does like one a day. But again, it's like never one a day because some are quicker and some are longer, but that's kind of what it averages out to. So, yeah.
Did you always know that you wanted to get involved with the painting and light and color of a show versus like storyboards or characters?
I wouldn't say I like knew specifically, but I knew that I loved it. And like as soon as you start doing the work, it becomes very obvious, like, yes, this is what I like. So yeah, when I tried with like storyboarding, it's like, oh, this is fun, but what do I want to do all day? Painting. Yeah. So
And I guess
kind of
that's why you
emergent.
got promoted.
I guess so. Hopefully a few other reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it. So you were doing background painting and then you became the color supervisor. God, every question I have for you is so embarrassing because it just shows how little I know about the show. Did we used to have another color supervisor before that, or were you our first?
Yeah. I was the first. Yeah. We had previously another person who was very strong in color as the art director, and then a design supervisor, and then it kind of like flopped for 3 and 4.
Oh, yeah.
Where the art director was very strong in design, so there was like a stronger need for a color supervisor.
Okay.
Yeah, because Jessica Yost was on with us before.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
It's something where it's like, and Jess had to leave to go become an art director on a whole different show. And so I just personally really liked Melissa's sense of color. And I was like, please put your sense of color on all of the things in the show. And that's how people get promoted.
So how did that more specific role get woven into the production process? Because I know that you started having color design meetings with the team. What would get talked about in those meetings? And was it like mostly at the beginning of a season that it would get talked about, or was it like all throughout production on a season?
Yeah, we'd have some like pre-season talks with the art team and with these guys on like how we wanted the color to play out throughout the whole season. And then we kind of go over it more specifically before each episode started, like getting into the details, like this scene, we're going to do this thing, and that one do that thing.
Because you brought up like color story and stuff, and you were very much like, you're telling a story through words, you're telling a story through visual, we should also be telling a story through the journey of color through the entire season, not just the episodes. And so what you would do is you'd like pull some storyboards from each like episode and you sort of lay it out an entire game plan, I guess, for like how the entire color script, there it is. Color script across the whole thing. Sorry, but you were not me.
Yeah, it's not something that like all TV shows do, but I think that it was very warranted for Infinity Train because it has such a strong story. I mean, it's almost like a movie, right? But just different episodes. So I really wanted to like do the justice with the color and have it support the story. So yeah, a lot of pre-planning. We had more time for book 3. Book 4 was a little more on the fly, but yeah, I think it paid off.
Because you would plan out things like a character's color scheme might start out this way at the beginning of the season to match their emotions. But then like by the end of the season, Grace is a completely different person. Simon is just more himself, I guess. But you would really, there would be an arc for the color as well as the character's emotions. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
one more thing on that. Some good advice I got in the process was a way you show a character's change visually is when they go back to the same environment, the lighting looks different and it like reflects a different emotion. And that's a good way to show that they're like have come to a different place. So that's one thing we tried to do.
So you did that with the mall car specifically. Like when we started the mall car, it was like a red strip crimson thing.
Yeah.
And then when Simon had taken over, it got like more red. And then by the time Grace had come back into the car after Simon's untimely death,
Untimely.
it was a much more like sort of bluish, lighter atmosphere. And so if you go through and you look at each of those backgrounds, you'll notice that they have completely different feels and tones to them because
Yeah.
right to do.
And the other challenge to that is like we can't fully repaint these backgrounds all the time. Like we would just die. So like how do we change the lighting without repainting everything? It's a lot of like adjustment layers on top.
Yeah.
And just how do we get this done so it reflects something different, but we can do it on a TV schedule. So that was a challenge, but we did it.
Cool. I'm gonna like kind of jump back to the beginning of the show more. When did you decide? Because I know that you had an outside character designer involved when it came to Tulip specifically. Did you decide that you were going to do that right away, like get some outside input, or just over the course of working on it? Like, I don't know, just what drove that decision to consult with other artists?
Is that for like the pilot?
That's
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Yeah, the pilot, yeah.
I'm not a good character designer.
Oh, okay, cool. So next question.
My art in general is very utilitarian. Like I can do the thing and that's about it. If you want some interesting, cool options, nope, not gonna be able to give that to you. I'm gonna give you the one thing and then you're gonna go like, it's fine. And that's it. So
Yeah, whatever.
So you have to know what your limitations are. And so there were times like that I was just like, we need to get someone to like take a crack at this. And that's how we ended up with Tulip having like a hoodie and like looking the way she did. Because I think my original Tulip was like, she just had like long sleeves and long pants and that was it.
But I think that's also, I don't know, I think that's also the fun part about the pilot is you get to explore it through other people's lenses. Like you have the opportunity to like see it from a perspective you hadn't considered before, and you can come up with some really cool ideas.
Yeah.
Like a hoodie.
Yeah, like a hoodie.
Like a hoodie, or
Cool
I don't know,
idea.
a ponytail.
Like
Yeah.
that's also the thing about making pilots that is pretty fun, which is that like when you're making a pilot, you're basically learning how to become a showrunner. When you're first making a TV show and you've never done it before, like when you become a showrunner, you're basically a person who was a writer or a board artist, or you had one super specific job on some other show, and now suddenly you're thrust into being essentially a small business owner in charge of a multi-million-dollar small business. And it can make you go insane. But so like the pilot is a good place to like learn to start to like how to delegate, how to be like, I don't know how to do this, someone else needs to do this. You start learning the process and stuff through the pilot. And then also the advantage of the pilot is that the company that you're making the pilot with will be like, is this person crazy? No, they seem okay. All right, maybe we'll pick up the show. And so that helps. But yeah, also a good place to mess around with styles and do different things that you wouldn't normally maybe think of, like a cool hoodie, for example.
Yeah.
Or like a pointy chin that turns out to be hard to work with, or like
funny.
big figure 8 glasses that maybe stick out and it turns out harder to animate.
Because I think it's kind of funny. I remember when we made during the Comic-Con preview, however many years ago now, there was 20 years ago, back in 2001, when we did this Comic-Con preview.
Oh no.
During that preview, I like had to quickly animate Tulip like being in a desert and then like turning her head or whatever. And because we didn't really have any footage to show. So I was like, I just had to quickly animate, but I totally forgot.
You did the whole thing.
I did, yeah. But I totally forgot that she had a different shaped chin. And so her chin ended up being like this big dumb bucket. so I've seen people comment being like, oh, they changed the design in between the pilot and this Comic-Con preview and the show, and they changed the design, and they're like, no, it's because I forgot. And it was just me doing it, and I don't know, I'd do it quickly in a weekend. So,
Yeah, quickly manifest an entire short animated sequence, background and effects and color and line work, everything.
All in about 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, you really dropped the ball on that.
Kind of embarrassing.
I just messed up the chin. The
but-
chin's so small.
Whatever.
Funny.
Yeah. It was garbage.
Can we get a new moderator?
No, I'm good.
I'm fine here.
I'm really good. So you talked about like you could sort of play around with style and take some chances. Was there anything, and feel free to throw anyone specific under the bus because that's cool. Anything that Cartoon Network pushed back on in terms of design or like character design, look and feel of the show, like because it has such a beautiful like painting style. Were they like pushing more towards like brighter colors or with the usual look and feel of
No,
other
not on
Cartoon
that kind of
Network
thing.
shows?
I would say sometimes I wish maybe they pushed more to be like, hey, doing a painting for every background is going to be very difficult. But I didn't know that at the time. So no, they were all very open to whatever sort of design choices we made. That's also part of the reason you do the pilot. You do the pilot, you see how it looks, and eventually, it's possible at Cartoon Network or something could be like, we don't like the way this looks, could we change it or something? But that doesn't really happen that often.
Yeah, they were all pretty much on board.
Yeah.
Didn't really get any design notes like
No.
that or anything.
God, what a boring answer.
I'm sorry it all went fine, Lindsay. I know you wanted us to suffer.
Now the other question has gone right out of my head. Beautiful. What was it? I'm so good at this.
You're doing great.
I think the
You're doing
best,
great, Liz.
the best part about moderating a panel with an audience in a pandemic is that you haven't spoken to other human beings, let alone in front of them. So you talked about how you had to go back and make tweaks to the color palette to make sure that it matched up with story and things like that. Did you ever feel like you needed to go back and change the design of something? Or was it pretty much like, well, that's what we got?
Oh, there's that whole Jesse thing we forgot what his number. That's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
design.
in the first episode of book 2,
Yeah.
because we start with Lake the whole time. By the end, when you meet Jesse, we weren't paying attention to the fact that he didn't have a number on his hand
Totally
for all the scene. It wasn't
Totally
until
forgot.
post and we were sitting in the edit bay with Bobby and Deb, and
Yeah.
we're like, oh
Yeah.
no.
So we had to like redo like, I don't know, like 20 shots or something.
Yeah, it was so
And
funny. It
some
makes
of
you really aware of how often somebody's hand is at the camera.
Yeah.
It's like, no, put it away, Jesse,
How many times
no.
someone goes like, eh, and they just like that small shift and there's like
Like,
a frame or two.
We
like
need
that.
it there too. Call it. But yeah, but it all worked out.
Yeah, it worked
Just a
out
very funny problem because it's just in that moment, narratively, we were not thinking about his
No,
number at all.
absolutely not.
We were just thinking about them meeting and their interaction.
Yeah, but it was terrifying. It was terrifying when we
Cold
found that
sweat.
problem because it was like, oh my God, this got through so many people.
Yeah,
It's got through so
That
many
is late.
layers. How did it go this far and no one said a thing or realized that there was no number on Jesse?
Or like, didn't we all just think that Oshkosh had a dash in it?
Oh yeah, that was another one. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I still forget which one it is. I remember that it got posted in a trailer or something,
Yeah, you
and I
rushed
think it had
in.
a dash, and then I was like, no, everybody's saying it's wrong, and so I had to like quickly go on and like change each frame to like get rid of each little dash because I was like, no, it's got to be right.
With like design and animation, there are a lot of like very technical rules, but when it comes to color design, it seems to me it's such a like instinctual, personal, kind of an emotional tie to what color is. Are there any like rules in terms of color design?
Well,
Might
that's
be
hard.
too open of a question. See, this is the problem when I like don't know.
The rule is make it doable. Otherwise, no. I mean, it has to read, right? Like the story has to support the story and not detract from it. And it has to be doable and it has to be clear. So like the values have to read. You have to be looking at the character and not have like a bright red object at the side of the screen that people shouldn't be looking at. But otherwise, yeah, it can be very abstract. Yeah, you can choose colors that work for emotions and they don't have to logically make sense. You can still use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how it's like, well, we all just sort of feel like red equals passion and blue equals like coldness, or green is natural. I don't know, whatever.
There are also, I mean, it feels like there are just a lot of color choices and things that are made because you're under such a tight deadline.
Am I getting a little closer to the mic? Sorry. Perfect.
It feels like there are a lot of choices that get made in color design because they're just sort of like, we have to get this done. We have no time. We have to do this. That there are just certain things that are like, it just has to work. So like, I remember at one point we were discussing like, what if there were different colors for the numbers, right? We could try different colors, and it was like, we could try, well, green, that's like sci-fi. Okay, that's like a sci-fi color. But then if you start going through all different colors and you say like, what if it glowed this color? Okay, blue, that's electricity. Yellow, that's also electricity. Red, that's fire. Orange, that's also fire. And then you can just like go through the whole thing, and then it was a, and then purple is magic. Everything that glows in purple is magic. I can't really think of any other. What other colors exist?
What about pink? I mean, green could also be poison, like
That's true.
toxic.
Yeah, but like green basically is the only one that's like, yeah, that's a sci-fi color. If something's glowing green, that's sci-fi. All the other colors, so you're just sort of like, well, it's gonna be green. The end. Because all the other ones feel weird. And then also when you start working about like time constraints and stuff, like when you were doing the backgrounds and designing the backgrounds, the color palettes and stuff for the backgrounds on Grace going back into her memories, you were like, we can't color all of these. There's too many. Like we can't just color them whatever the basic colors are. So you were like, just do basically blue washes on everything with some highlights of blue or different kinds of blue in here and there. Where it's like, so the sort of dreamlike quality comes because there were color choices that had to be made quickly because we had no time to do anything else. And I think it's great, and I'd love the decision, but it's also a decision that comes up because of constraints, basically.
Yeah, give up a really cool desaturated look to her memories, which at this point in her life are so far away from where she is now. And we also kept regular timeline Grace in her current palette, so she always stood out in comparison to the backgrounds.
Yeah, the other really helpful thing about a color script besides supporting the story is it just helps you make quick decisions when you're like, need to make quick decisions. So you just kind of like, okay, what color should this scene be? Well, this person's feeling that way, so we do that thing, and it's done. So efficient. Yeah.
Like those are kind of all the questions I planned.
Are we gonna unmute the chat?
I did check with Alex and Justin to see if they had any questions they would have asked if they could have been here.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. They're listening in hell right now. Wow, that got a glow. So Alex suggested asking about the like tech design of the show, because you were talking about how like green equals sci-fi. How did you go about deciding it was going to like what the tech of the train was going to look like? Because it's kind of industrial, but that could have been any number of like technological designs.
Everybody looking at me. It started. I wanted the outside of the train to feel like a very industrial, brutalist architecture. Like when we were discussing the way the train cars would look and all that sort of stuff, I actually gave a lot of brutalist architecture to look at versus trains. Because every time we started designing things that looked like train cars and stuff, it felt very small. Because train cars are full of tiny little details and things. But if you're making something look massive, you can't really see a lot of details. It's sort of a big mass, and then there's like a little, you can tell that there are details somewhere, but it's not really, no, you can't really see them very clearly. So we talked about a lot of brutalist architecture being the kind of architecture that's popular in like Soviet Russia and early communist China, like those sorts of things. very like blocks. Everything's made of concrete. Everything's made of tall perfects. Everything's like sharp. And that's what I want the outside to look like. But as soon as we start getting towards the actual technical insides of the train, well, now we're starting to talk about things that are interacting with people's brains and are interacting with people's like bodies. And so it feels very strange to have these like super harsh, brutalist designs for that. So it felt like everything that has to start interacting with a human being in any way should be much more smooth and soft and that sort of thing. So when you go into the tape car, for example, all those, the porters are all very smooth and sleek and that sort of thing. One is also a very like smooth shape. And then they're like going through gross liquid stuff. And so everything's very like smooth when it comes to interacting with people. And as soon as it becomes an actual train thing that has nothing to do with any sort of person, that's when it starts becoming very industrial and heavy. And yeah, it's kind of that's kind of what real life is like. That's surgical rooms aren't full of giant cleavers. They're full of tiny little perfect little bitty things.
Yeah.
Little things.
Oh, little things. Yeah.
And that's kind of the approach that we took to that sort of thing.
Well, I guess just before we jump into the Q&A section from the audience and Zoom, the well-behaved Zoom, hopefully, we actually haven't talked about what a supervising producer does on the show. So, like, what were your responsibilities?
Everything.
All of it is what it looked like.
I was there for most of everything Owen did.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know.
She does.
Yeah,
She does
I mean,
everything.
to me,
Like,
it just looked like absolutely everything. You guys were pretty much joined at the hip.
the showrunner goes in and goes like, do this, do that, and the supervising director and supervising producer is like, well, now we have to actually do it. and it's very much a sort of a partnership, really. The way that we were working, at least, was very much a partnership. We're sort of like, yeah, I'm the creator and stuff. I have opinions, but basically, anytime Maddie was like, "That's stupid," I'd be like, "Okay."
And I said it like that.
Yeah, she said it
Classic Maddie.
really
That's
harshly.
stupid.
She would say that's stupid. She would then like criticize my hair.
Yeah. And then I, dump your books.
There was a lot of bullying.
Kick dirt in your eyes.
Stomp on my box of cereal.
Maddie provided the much needed bullying
Yeah.
aspects of the show. Just kidding. That was Alex for it. What a bully. I can talk about them because they're not here.
Yeah.
They were my partner.
Basically, the supervising producer does everything the showrunner does, and is like the number one person also.
Yep. I think it can vary from show to show, but
Yeah,
on Infinity Train, I ended up just being in all the same meetings and doing all the same
Yeah, it was
things.
all the same
and
stuff.
just giving notes and going around
stupid.
talking to people. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a more concise answer.
No, that's fine. I've been nothing but concise this whole time, so I set the standard.
Yeah. Sorry to disappoint you, fall short of that goal.
I don't know. I feel like, we certainly covered all of my questions, and I know that everybody out there is going to have a lot more questions, so I think we can go ahead and shift. I did just want to say, before we get started, there is no news about anything to do with the show. No one is secretly working on it. So don't ask questions about
I can say it
There's
even.
nothing to say.
I can also say it. Like the show is over. Okay. I love you all very much. However, that said, yes, a script for the 5th book, or however we want to call season book, whatever, that sort of stuff, it exists. And there, as far as I know, more is not being made like behind my back or something. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know, but it's unlikely. That said, every time that fans trend the show or support the show or show other people the show or things like that, that does help. I know it feels like it doesn't. It feels like it's just yelling into a void, but you kind of are, but you're also not. I mean, you're yelling into the void of the internet, and the internet sucks.
At the very least, it means a lot to all of us that
It
people
really
care
does.
and like what we made because we tried really hard to make it good.
Yeah.
That
and
just feels great to see people enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that it does is that it alerts other people to the show. It gets other people to know. It turns it into, you guys, because of the amount of passion and stuff that you've had, it has made the show into basically sort of a cult classic already.
A cult of a conductor.
Yeah. And it's really elevated the show in a lot of people's eyes. And the other thing that it does is just because maybe the network that it currently is supposed to be with is saying, no, thank you, no more, that doesn't mean that they're the only people that see that, okay? So like lots of people at lots of networks, at lots of studios see that. And they not only see that as like, oh, Infinity Train, that's interesting. They also see that as like, oh, you worked on Infinity Train? That's awesome. So every time that it helps not just the show and possibly someone else who might be interested in producing the show or funding the show or something like that, it can help that, but it can also help everyone who worked on the show because then they have name recognition. And it helps the actual individuals who created the show when they go on to other projects to get more money. But also, you know, it lets them have more freedom and stuff and what they're able to work on, which is a really cool thing. But again, yes, the show is currently over. No, I do not think that it's over forever, personally. I think that there is a possibility that more can be made. I think it's not going to happen tomorrow. And it's not secretly happening in a dungeon somewhere right now. But yes, that's roughly what I have to say on that. But I'm still happy to answer anything else. And even if you ask me a question that's almost the same sort of question, I have to repeat the same, it's fine. But I will, you know, I'll answer as best I can on anything that I can.
Cool. Yep.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Atticus up front here.
So notice trailers, well, at least there's had crazy thing and using the started.
Yeah.
Then you need to be able to map orchestra before.
Yeah.
Is there any music that you wish you could have added in?
And if before you answer, you could kind of sum up what the question was for everybody watching.
Was there any music that we wish we'd added in beyond Crazy Train, Yellow Magic Orchestra?
Well, we've got Cameo, but we talked about having Cameo, that same song that Tulip sings in book 1, also play in book 4 because it would have been out at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been of the same period. But we kind of thought like that, I don't know, we didn't want to distract from the story that was already happening there. It was more just like, that would be fun because
it would have happened in the diner scene when Mickey and Ryan
on the
were talking.
Radio.
Yeah, just on the radio in the background. That's where it would have been, just in the background. And there was also another time that we thought about using it, which was we would have used at the end of book 1 when they're like, "You ready to go, Tulip?" "Yeah, I'm ready for anything." And then, "Oh, pretty ladies."
Yeah, so basically we hung our hat on one song and thought about using it forever. But yeah.
It felt like it was kind of taken away from the moment a little bit.
I'm going to kind of stand up for the Q&A just so I can see anybody who's raising their hand in the back. Going to amble up. Back problems thanks to sitting on my couch for almost 2 years. Black mask studded collar here.
Did we have more opportunities when the show moved to HBO Max? I mean, it was kind of, the show was always assumed it was going to be on HBO Max in the first place, even though it wasn't, HBO Max didn't exist when we were first working on it. Like when we were first working on the show, it was sort of, there was talk about the show being a streaming only show for whatever it was that Warner was going to make as their streaming service. We didn't know what it was. Warner didn't know what it was. Cartoon Network didn't know what it was. And it didn't happen at that point because Donald Trump didn't like CNN and he didn't want the merger happening.
Yeah. I don't know. We're just making TV.
Yeah,
so
it's whatever. We're just doing our jobs.
Yeah.
So it held up the merger for a long time. Therefore, no streaming service happened for a long time, and that affected a number of shows.
But that meant we got on TV on linear
Yes,
television.
exactly. So that's how we ended up being on TV for like a week, and for both of the first two.
What a claim to fame.
We were on TV for a week.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up being the first two. And then by the time it actually started coming out on HBO Max and stuff, the show was basically, it was already like, not finishing up, but it was, we'd already been working on season 3 and 4 by the time we were like, yeah, it's gonna go on HBO Max now. So that was already sort of decided for us. And HBO Max was sort of like, hey, do what you're gonna do. And then we just sort of did
Yeah, I feel like it was lucky in that way that there weren't any negative aspects to it.
Yeah.
But it didn't necessarily feel like, oh, we can go hog wild. We just, regardless of the format, we just told the story we wanted to tell. And we're fortunate that they all agreed that they also wanted to tell that story. But yeah, so it all went, it went okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And specific, like, especially because we were still answering to the same people. Like we were never all of a sudden getting notes from different people. It was from season 1 to season 5, we were getting notes from the same executives.
Yeah.
Someone in the back. Wow, shy people in the back. Let's do black shirt, black mask, glasses. Great.
Okay.
Any advice for people getting into the animation industry? I mean, I'd say first just think about what part you'd like to do. As Melissa already illustrated in an earlier question, like once you get into something, you can find that you love it and want to do it more. But if you have an idea of what part you're interested in, like props, backgrounds, writing, storyboards, just make a lot of that. Do it a lot. You'll learn from it, and you'll have something to show when in a portfolio sort of sense. And like, I know that's probably advice that everybody's heard a million times, but I don't know. I think it works. I don't know. Do you have anything else you think?
I think that works. Like if you looked at some show and you were like, here are props and things in the style of the show, like you could try doing it based on a show that already exists so you could match the style, which is pretty helpful. I would say just making your own stuff, like make your own stuff and make like sequential comics. I found comics to be really helpful in understanding how somebody would do storytelling.
Yeah, I'd say for storyboards, it was really
helpful. For storyboards,
helpful.
it was very helpful. Like, and that's how we would find people. Like I remember, I think Marie Lum, we found because of like she was making interesting stuff on Instagram. And like that's sort of just how we find people sometimes. And I just find that seeing sequential comics that people have made lets you know the kinds of shot choices they make, lets you know the kinds of stories they personally like to tell, which is helpful. And also never make a comic that starts with somebody sitting in a SMT. That's my opinion.
Whoa, harsh.
I hate it.
What if it's autobio, Owen?
No, I hate it.
Melissa, do you have any hot tips?
Just learn to draw really well.
That is amazing advice.
But
yeah, if you could just
so true. Like
do that.
you have to, even color artists, even though I paint all day, like you have to know how to draw genuine in art. Like you have to do it quickly and well. It's so important. And be a nice person.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is an issue sometimes where I can look at a prop or I can see a character design or something. I can see that there's no form or structure underneath the abstraction of the character that's been designed. And so like it is helpful to have a very like strong basic understanding of like what stuff is before abstraction into animation.
Yeah. And that doesn't have to be literally you see the structure, it just you can tell the person knows the structure.
You can tell.
Yeah. So observational.
Yeah.
And it takes a really long time to learn how to draw too. So get
Don't beat
started.
yourself up about it if
Started
it takes a while. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also a true thing, is that like I know people who didn't get into the animation industry and stuff until like their 30s and stuff, and that's fine. And no one's gonna be like, whoa, hold on there, old man. Like that's not gonna happen. And if it does, you get to sue them.
Yeah.
So it's fine. Like no one cares about your age. They care about what you're actually going to be making for them. So don't worry about it.
And I will say for color specifically, plein air painting will be invaluable. So work on that. I always look at people's plein air in their portfolios and I can tell so much. So.
And I will just add, just because I've seen you say this a lot online, have a way to contact you on your website or social media.
Please put your email in your portfolio somewhere. God's sake, please. It is so frustrating. Even I'm gonna call him out here, Chrome Canyon. even he, the guy who did all the music for us, even he, I had to go to like his Facebook and find like a link within a Facebook thing that he'd done at one point. I had to like do all this searching just to get in contact with him. And I've talked to him now. I'd be like, what the hell are you doing, man? He's like, I don't know. I just forgot.
Well, he's doing something right. He has a good career.
Yeah, it worked. But I mean, in the end, I had to really, really wanted it. Please just put your email somewhere.
Ben, did you have something you were going to say?
Everybody type your question really fast right now.
Breaking in as a writer? This is a very individual experience, but I can give you the rundown on how me, Justin, and Alex came in to be seen by Owen and Maddie. They were very different experiences. For me, I had spent, I think I was like second or third oldest in the entire crew. I had spent like 12 years just doing improv and sketch comedy at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in Los Angeles. I was a drama major, and I heard about this experience because a friend of mine who I met at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, his name is Mike Mitchell, well-known guy who hosts a podcast called Doughboys. He worked with Toby Jones on a project. Toby went to school with Maddie and Owen, and he let Mitch know that there was this opportunity. He knew of a couple of shows that had just been greenlit. Did he want to submit something, and did he have any friends who wanted to submit something? Which I then heard about from my boyfriend, who's closer friends with him. So this is the exact process that you want to replicate. And so it just so happened that I had 2 acts of a script written that was, in my mind, animated. And I frantically, over the course of 12 hours straight, with the help of my boyfriend, finished the 3rd act, sent it in, and then I got an interview, and the interview went well, and I got the job.
Lindsay was the first writer that we hired. That was the first yes that we had.
I was the first interviewee. I answered correctly which Star Wars franchise was my favorite.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Oh no.
I've just lost this job.
Yeah, we have to go back and unwrite.
They said, what kind of sci-fi do you like? I said, I love Star Trek. They said, which one? I said Voyager. And basically, I could feel in that moment getting the job. I like felt it click because they both like pushed back from the table in their little wheelie chairs and were like, ah! It was a triumphant moment. And then Justin Michael, I actually have known since 2007 because he also did improv and sketch comedy at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. And yet that's not at all how he heard about the show. He had been working on stuff for ages, like he directed a bunch of shorts for Funny or Die. He worked on his own shows.
He did some stuff on Robot Chicken too.
And he had a relationship with a development exec at Cartoon Network at the time. She brought him in on other jobs. And I think he submitted through her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you saw.
We interviewed him, and as he'll tell you, and that we've talked about publicly before, his interview wasn't great. It wasn't.
I don't think you've been that specific.
Wait,
terrible.
what?
It was the worst interview. No, just, it was,
I was like, I was there. What the
it was
I
fine.
remember? What
It was
happened?
a fine interview. But what happened after the interview was that he was like, "Oh, I have so many ideas," and then he sent this like follow-up email that was like 4 pages long or something of like all this other stuff that he felt would work with the show.
Yeah, like cool ideas, cars
Yeah,
and
and it was all
stories
really
and
cool,
characters.
and we're like, okay, all
It's
right.
like, we're gonna need a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, even if your interview was terrible, the worst interview,
Justin, if you're listening, it's fine. Don't
even if
worry
it's
about it.
terrible,
Justin, it's fine.
it can still be okay. It's fine.
I think he also submitted for Toby's project. There was a script there too. Yeah, which I got to read. Very good.
Yeah. And didn't he also audition for one?
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah,
I
'cause
forgot about that. That's funny
Justin
because
is a
he's also an
voice
actor.
as well.
Yeah, voice actor
Yeah.
on Fungi. You
Yeah.
Check out HBO Max.
He's also Funshine Bear on the Care Bear.
He's also Gordon in those insurance commercials.
True, that is true.
And then there was Alex, who was a friend of Toby and Maddie's and was working in a call center in Fargo at the time.
Yeah.
And so we called him at the call center.
Yeah, but he's an excellent writer. Like
Yeah.
done
Well,
a lot of work just for himself and
Yeah,
his own
that was the thing.
enjoyment.
Is what he was doing is he was just making stuff for himself. He was just writing stuff for himself. And so he sent us some of the samples, and I was like, well, this is great.
Yeah,
Like, I
it
love this
fit the
stuff.
tone really well. It was
Yeah.
just like, oh,
He wasn't
yes.
even like going online and like publishing stuff online. It was just stuff he was writing in his home by himself.
Yeah, and Toby's like, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
So no Toby Jones is the moral of
Yeah,
the
that's a
story.
big one.
Yeah, so that's the other route, is either have a boyfriend and a friend from a comedy theater, make your own stuff and just have it available online, or grow up with somebody who will then tell you about the job. But like all of that is just to say, like, first and foremost, you need to be writing and you need to have something that
Yes.
you can submit if you hear about a job.
Because
And
opportunities
it's
will
all
come
like
up.
who you know, but and I've said this a few times, by who you know, I don't mean like the president of Paramount, and I don't mean some like big agents at CAA. I mean like your peers.
Yeah.
You make friends with other people coming up in the business, and that's how you hear about these opportunities.
And in the end, it doesn't matter if like the person that's running some show or something happens to know you. If you're not, if they get the sample and like it's still not good, you're not gonna get
Yeah, like
hired.
it has to fit the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Lindsay, you're right
It's
on.
really about being part of the community
Mhm.
Yeah.
and getting involved in the community
Yeah.
of writers and stuff.
So like, don't worry so much about networking as much as like finding like-minded people who you want to make stuff with, and
Yeah.
make sure that, like Melissa said, you're nice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like learning
big
how to
one.
draw, and make sure you can write.
Yeah.
And take constructive criticism well.
And shower.
And
That's true.
yeah, you can't be like Jake Gyllenhaaling. You're like, you need to have good personal hygiene and be nice. Is there another question from the Zoom that we want to take, and then we'll go
It's
back
like
to
an audience
the
test.
audience?
Audience one more time.
No? Okay, cool.
Wait, I
Yes, you. You guys want to take this?
We're advanced
Can I
planners.
ask a
Yeah.
question?
That's one of the-
Just to repeat the question real quick.
Oh,
sorry.
right.
Sorry.
Because it's such a strong show in terms of themes, did we plan that out in advance?
Yeah, I think that's usually one of the earlier things
Yeah.
we talk about. We talk about characters and themes. So we talk about like who this character is, what their issues might be, how those might tie into a larger theme for a season. and
How
then
it's going to end.
yeah, how it's going to end, so we can then build obstacles for them throughout the season that will be thematically resonant
Yeah.
with their journey. So yeah, that's a pretty early early thing we talk about for sure.
It feels like if we don't have that stuff figured out early on, you sort of lose your compass as you're working through it.
Because then you start being like, why are we even telling this episode?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
It's like, what's the purpose of this happening? Why
Yeah,
is this
but
happening?
if they're all going towards the same goal, it makes it easy
Yeah.
to focus on the point.
And that would feed into who we decided the best type of character was to put at the
Yeah.
forefront of that season.
Mhm.
And then I'm sure once it got to the art team, then it was like, well, how do we back up those themes?
Yeah.
In design and color.
Yeah.
Let me take some from back. Fire mask. Could you cut
The
that?
most difficult part of pitching a show was ever too dark.
It was never too dark.
Yeah, it was never too
I
dark.
never seemed to have a problem with that.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in that way.
The difficult parts of pitching. I mean, every show has a problem its first season. Every single show. That's actually one of the reasons that it's so difficult. That a lot of shows are being made now and they only get one season. That's like, its first seasons are the hardest. And so what happens is, first seasons are going to be the hardest because you have to explain to a bunch of people what the character is, what the world is,
the
what all this
rules.
stuff is. And so the first season is always super, super hard because no one has seen the character, no one knows what it looks like, no one knows what it feels like, and you're just sitting there describing it to a room of people.
And
that
then
are
you go, do you like it?
and then they go, and it's just this like weird thing. So the problem is if you have a show where every single season has a new main character every single season, you have to do that every single season, which
But
is
yeah,
hard.
our solution to that, and partly also just because we loved Ashley Johnson's performances,
Yeah.
Tulip in season 1, was like, well, maybe we could sort of thread it through naturally by making Lake.
Yeah.
You introduce the character, and then you get to continue their story, and and that sort of ended up propelling the next few seasons, like how we thought about it.
Yeah. It helped a lot to introduce the character in a previous season because then we can be like, remember?
Yeah.
You met them already.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about darkness. Like, I guess the show is dark, but when we were pitching it, it isn't like we pitched it as a dark thing. It's the darkness sort of comes more from when you're actually within the episode and experiencing that direct story and those
Yeah.
emotions of the characters. So it's not as hard to wrap your head around it because you're already invested, at least
Yeah.
a little bit
And
by that point.
There's something else that also like the censors and stuff, when we talked with them, they would be like, no, all this stuff is fine because it makes sense with what's happening with the characters emotionally and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, okay, great.
Yeah,
Well,
that
we
was all
argue.
fine.
Yeah, it's not like we were ever pitching like gratuitous violence.
No.
It was all like dark emotional themes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, when we pitched Simon melting, which I feel like is the common like, whoa, this show's for adults.
And we
Like,
said, and then Simon leaves. I don't know. He likes him.
yeah. I mean, we told them like, hey, at the end of this guy's gonna die. It's gonna happen. And then we like got that way in advance. And we're like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Just so you know, it's gonna happen. And they were like, okay, all right, okay. And then it just, they seemed fine.
Yeah, I
don't know.
guess my only hope is that it was emotionally satisfying, and that's part of the reason why
Yeah.
nobody had a problem with it. It's like, okay, I understand why this happened.
Yeah.
Like, it
They
makes a
seemed much
logical
more
sense.
okay with it as long as it emotionally made sense, which
Yeah.
is like cool. I'm glad that's a good reason to say something is allowed or
Yeah.
not allowed.
I don't know about when you pitched it initially for the pilot or anything, but I assume it was just a lot of focus on the hook of the series as a whole,
Yeah.
and Tulip the character. Is
Yeah.
that a lot of what it was about
Pretty
originally?
much, yeah. And it was, nothing was ever brought up about how the steward was sort of like scary or anything like that. None of it was brought up. I mean, it was brought up in that there were certain things that they were afraid of going like, oh, is this TV PG or is this TV PG-14 or whatever the demarcations are.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Super ultra TV.
yeah. And I was like, well, it's for older kids. Right? It's the older one. And they were like, well, here's the notes for the younger one. I was like,
Okay.
I'm not going to do the ones for the older one. How about? And they were like, okay, but if you do that, it could be hard to get the show actually sold and made and stuff. And I was like, that's
Okay,
fine.
why am I
And then
leaning
it
so?
worked out fine.
Yeah, it turned out okay.
And correct me if I'm remembering wrong, but like, I think we got the fewest notes on all of the book 3 scripts of all of them. And the reason for that was because the most intense notes we'd get from the network were not about darkness. It was, so why does their number go up? So why does their number go down? So why does their number do this? And where's their number? Where does the number start? Where does the number end? How do we know we're on the train? Make sure you show the train again. And with book 3, it was like, well, they don't want their number to go down. And they were like, okay. Great. We should have done this the whole time. And then book 4 came and we were like, oh, the numbers again. Was there something on the Zoom?
Oh, sure. There are a few.
The question is, were there, what was the process of voice casting and directing the actors, and were there any actors you wanted to get for the show and couldn't?
There were actors that we wanted to get for the show sometimes that turned it down for various reasons, but you know, it's not like I think the show was worse off for it. I think the actors that we got were great.
Yeah, kind of.
The process for casting voices was usually we just thought of people that we thought would work great. Like with Kate Mulgrew, that was just an early on, like, oh, she's
Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could get Kate Mulgrew?
yeah, we're just that'd be cool. And so we're just into it. And then we asked her, and then she said yes. I think the most shocking thing that happens is that you go like, can we just ask them if they want to do it? And they go yes, and then they'd say yes, and you're like, oh, okay, that's weird.
I think the best one was you tricked me, because we were casting for the voice of Perry in book 2, and I think we hadn't picked someone yet, but the date of the record had come by, and I was just like, I hadn't thought about it too much. I was like, I guess we'll get them later. We'll pick it up. And who should walk into the record booth but Bill Corbett from Mystery Science Theater 3000, which I'm a big fan of. And Owen didn't tell me, so he could see the look on my face.
Yeah, and it was a massive conspiracy against Maddie. Everyone on the show knew that was happening, except for Maddie, including her boyfriend, who I was texting him being like, you have to get her here at this exact time. She has to be here. And I remember that day you were like, God, Toby was driving me crazy this morning. Like he was
really like, rushing me out the door.
Rushing me out the door. And it was just like he was checking his Maps app all the time, being like, we got to get there right now. We have to.
It's like, I know where work is. Like, it's not new.
And it was a very good time.
You said I turned into a robot?
You sort of walked towards him like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
Hi. And what you said, the first words you said to him were, hi, I didn't know you were coming today.
That's me trying to act natural, like my mind didn't just get blown.
Like that was fun. It was also really fun.
And he was so good too. He was perfect for Perry.
He was like, so I'm just playing like a used car salesman type. Great, that's me. Yes, totally. That's my guy. And it's like that was interesting. Getting J.K. Simmons being like,
that was great.
I'll voice a pig baby. He didn't even question it. He was just like, we were just like, do you want to voice a giant pig baby?
He's like, can I record from the studio by my house? And we're like,
sure. Yes. And he's like, okay. And they did it. And we're just like, no questions asked. Like when he came to do the record, he was just like, so this is it, all right. And you just like start doing the thing, and then it was over. And we were just like, that's the weirdest situation.
Yeah, very odd. And I want to say that's a lot of the big name people, but obviously Chrissy Reed helped us cast a lot of the other characters, and she had so many great insights and a lot of great people to pull from.
Especially when it came to
Robbie Damon is fantastic.
Yeah, and when it came to doing anything like the singing or anything, she was like, oh yeah, this person has a history in Broadway or like whatever. She can go through all these people, and she could bring in all these people that like know exactly how to sing exactly like a Broadway thing. It was great. Christy was great.
And like Johnny and Sakai for book 4. Fantastic.
Yeah. it was, yeah, it was kind of just think of who you want and then ask them. And it turns out often they'll just say, yeah.
And then specifically with the voice of Grace, Kirby Howell-Baptiste.
Oh, yeah.
She is a friend of Justin's. I know her as well, also through the Upright Citizens Brigade. And that was like,
we went
Justin
to go
was
see,
like, you should definitely get Kirby to submit an audition for this. And you guys had actually seen her in a sketch show of
yeah,
Justin.
we went to go see a sketch show that Justin was in, just to like go see our friend's sketch show. And she was in it. And we're like, who's this? This person's great. And that's,
She's got star qualities.
she's gonna hit it big, kid. And it was great. Yeah.
And then just, I thought I'd share a tidbit that I didn't know about the voice direction process, which is that like when you're directing a voice actor, it has to be so specific because you're only hearing it. And so it would be a lot of things like, could you say that with more warmth? Or like, could you, because you can't give a line reading.
A common one is the palm. Can you say it with more of a palms up? Anything like that?
Yeah, like can that be more of a question, or like can you say this with like a cajoling tone, or like it? So it's a very interesting direction process.
One last shout out to Isabella Javier,
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
voice of
Man,
Hazel.
It is,
So cute.
it is it's very cool to watch someone who's very good at what they do, especially when they're a child.
Yeah,
And then
she was
also-
amazing.
And also, I asked her mom at one point, I was like, she can just cry just whenever she wants. Like, how do you deal with that? And she was like, I don't know.
I just gotta believe.
I bring her in here and she cries for you guys. And I don't know.
What's real?
And so, yeah, so I'm just like, that sounds terrible to have this, to
have a genius actor
to have
child.
a kid who can just cry on command.
But no, she was a
Realistically.
true delight. Very
Yeah, this is
talented.
great.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in.
Another question from the audience. Blue hair, gray beret.
I was wondering if that was like a artistic decision or similar to a small presentation that they want to have about
So that was about like why perhaps there's not why there isn't more explicit neurodivergent or
Well, so there's a lot of like portrayal of mental health issues and neurodivergence without too much like explicitly stated. And was there a reason for that?
mm-hmm.
I would say whenever you get into those super, super detailed things like that, it's a very difficult thing to write. I absolutely would not feel comfortable explicitly being like, this person is this thing, without being able to have someone come in and be like, let's talk about this.
Yeah, have someone on
Get
there
this
to like
perfect.
give us like direct.
And so we would often bring in consultants for various other parts of the process. And it's something that's like, I'm not against doing someone who explicitly has that sort of thing. It's just something we
Yeah, I think within the seasons it didn't come up
Yeah,
for
it
those characters, but
it just wasn't necessary for that specific section that we did. It's not something that I'm against doing. I'd totally be down to do that.
we were just thinking about different themes for those characters in the seasons that we did.
Yeah.
But I think, it'd be great to see more representation for them on screen.
Totally.
And like Owen said, I think if we just had people to make sure that we weren't messing it up really bad.
That's always the thing, is that we just try to be very sensitive. And if we know that we can't be sensitive to a certain issue, we're sort of like, let's find issues that we can talk about, that we know we can be sensitive towards and figure that sort of thing out.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't do that, then
Find the people who
find
can.
people who can.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's something that like I'd love to totally get into. It's just we weren't able to in the first couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Also, I would say like we didn't actually like talk about it too much in the writer's room, but I would say a lot of the like, in some cases, like particularly with like bullying or depression or more the mental health issues, it's what capabilities does the character themselves have to talk about it? in explicit terms. And like if somebody is struggling with that, they're not going to be able to label it very easily. So it's like, well, what is the character themselves comfortable revealing? Like, are they even that self-aware that we would be like labeling what their problems are? So I think it was like, first and foremost, it was like, well, how would the character talk about their issues? And then it would be like, beyond that, an issue of making sure that the people in the room had a lived experience. And if they don't, then we need to talk to people outside the room and just being sure that we're, very sensitive. Oh, can Lake taste? That's a really good, she can, or she at least got advice about what she should smell.
Yeah.
I would just kind of assumed it was crystal gem rolls. Like, I don't know, they can eat, but does she need to eat?
Yes.
Yeah. She can taste.
Oh yeah, well, all those discussions we had about that, yes.
If you want music and soundtracks and stuff, you're gonna have to contact Warner. Otherwise,
But at least the first season soundtrack
first
is
season's
available,
online.
as well as Train to Nowhere.
is online.
And Owen made something for this show in particular that is audio based.
There might be some music on there of some kind that you could probably find out what it is if you got it.
Yeah, but at the moment, there's no official release for the other season's soundtracks, unfortunately. But maybe just if you can track down Chrome Canyon's weird link on his Facebook page or whatever, you just ask him for it. Maybe he'll give it to you.
I personally have all the music on my computer.
So go to Owen's house.
If you come to my house, come over, we can listen to it.
Yeah.
Like my Sonos or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Were there any other quick little trivia tidbits? Okay. Cat shirt.
Like a train car to live in? Just my wife.
Oh no.
So it was if we had to
I mean,
pick a train car to live in, which one would it be?
I guess I might choose food pyramid car because I'm genuinely worried about not having food on the train.
Yeah, at least there would be food. That's true.
Yeah, I'm genuinely worried about being stuck somewhere without a toilet, without food, without shelter. And the food pyramid seems to have all those except maybe a toilet. I would just choose to not eat the chili, I guess. And that would just be, that's the toilet now.
I love malls, but I don't know if I love that mall. So I don't know.
That mall's also filled with horrible children.
But it wasn't always. Maybe
Yeah.
if you could choose what time you live in.
The fascist mall?
Yeah.
Weird.
Maybe the cabin.
Oh, yeah.
That's really cozy.
Got food.
It has running water, running Randall.
Yeah.
That's funny because I was going to say the cat's car before it gets destroyed.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's any food in there.
Huh?
TV though.
Do you think she has any food in there? She
She-
probably has.
she
I guess
probably
it's-
eats.
It's just gonna be like canned
Does the
cat
cat
food. Is
taste?
that what you're gonna eat?
I'm resourceful. I'll go get food. I'll bring it
Yeah.
back. There's room for a fridge in there, probably.
Genuinely worried. I'm really worried about the food.
Another question from the audience?
Can I answer?
Flower mask black cat.
You're not gonna like the answer.
We or 1-1 decide on what someone's number is for their hand?
We sit in a
We
room.
go.
We sit. The reason that we decided that numbers are relative to the person is because the way that we figure out numbers is we go, 400,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. Like within a character's story, there is a logic
Yes.
to the numbers. Like, but thunk, 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 thunk.
Yes.
But perhaps the initial picking of numbers is a little more what feels right.
On the writer's side, it's just figuring out what feels right. On the actual in-universe reasons, it's, you know, there is actual relative scale that we end up sort of choosing.
Can I
Yes.
say?
What can you say? What are
Yes.
It's in book 5.
Oh,
more
Never heard of it. What's book 5?
Yeah, we specifically lay out more detail about how the train assigns numbers
That's
in
true.
good old book 5.
That's true.
Another question. Very back. I only see black mask. White shirt, yeah. Yeah, please do.
Please don't die.
I wanted to ask, so a lot of those in the LGBT community have a lot of really compelling research skills, particularly via there's a lot of romantic coding before. Just wanted to get your thoughts on those process readings. Also, unrelated, a friend of mine was wondering if you were on fire about Blade Runner.
What's Blade Runner? I don't know.
Owen's never heard of Blade.
No, I don't know. No.
Yeah. Can you summarize the question?
Yeah, so the question is, a lot of people have readings of characters being transgender or LGBTQ+. Do we want
What do we
to
think
see-
about
what do
those
we think
readings?
about people's interpretations in that way? And also, was book 2 at all inspired by Blade Runner-ish movie? I think Owen would hate.
Owen, well-noted hater of sci-fi.
Yeah. When it comes to the meanings and all the sort of when it comes to the meanings and the metaphors and those sorts of things, we're very, very pro interpretation. Whatever you see in the show is canon, the end. Anything that I say afterward, you don't want to end up with like a J.K. Rowling situation. Like, we don't want that.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, when people talk about there being, death of the author or something, like that's a thing that I strongly believe in, which is like, what we made is what we made, and whatever interpretations you took out of that is what interpretations you took out of that. My opinion in the end does not matter, because you are a person who is experiencing art. And whenever you experience art, what you're doing is having a personal connection to the work that you are seeing, right? So it doesn't matter what mine was, because like it may be slightly interesting, but it's not worth it. And in the end, another thing that I notice is like when creators and stuff start saying like, oh, it's this and this and this, people end up sort of bashing each other when someone has a different interpretation than what the creator said. So that's one of the reasons that I don't ever say what those meanings are, because it's yours. Like, it's your personal feeling with the art.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I have to say.
Yeah.
So if that's something
So
that
yeah,
you
we're
get
totally open.
yeah,
What-
exactly. If that's
what
something that you get out of it, go for it.
And just as a
I'm
side
not gonna
note,
stop.
really glad and touched that
Yes.
it meant so much.
We do have personal things and things that we were going for, but it's definitely like,
I think it's all about creating a safe space for everybody to have their feeling about the show valid, and as few fights online as possible.
yeah.
There's no one right way to do the show.
Yeah, I've seen.
And we really love seeing everybody's interpretation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I've seen
fantastic.
people have the interpretation of like gay characters and stuff and transgender for season 2. I've seen people have completely different takes on season 2, and all of them point to different things that spoke to them personally. And there's no way that I'm ever going to tell somebody like, no, that one's wrong, that one's right. Except, of course, if you ever think that one of them's like pro-Nazi or something, that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, but yeah, Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Never heard of it.
Okay.
Put any denizen on the train?
Yeah. If we could put any denizen on the train.
Oh, like what denizen needs the train?
I don't know.
Or
Take one off the train?
is it like what
Because we already put all the denizens on it.
denizen?
We put them on it.
So that's okay.
It just had deeper philosophical implications than we were ready for.
Wow.
Well, I think the cat for sure needs the train. Like
She's
that
got a lot of
cat,
baggage.
the cat would have a very high number, I think.
That's true.
Yeah. And then if it's like, let's just say this might have been part of the question. What denizen would you guys all have chosen to be paired with on the train?
Khaki Bottoms is really upbeat, and I think I would like his positive outlook while traveling on this
Yeah,
nightmare
it seems like it'd
train.
be really helpful. At least keep your spirits up.
Mhm.
Otherwise, not helpful. I feel like there's definitely a certain advantage to having one be your partner on the
Oh, yeah.
train.
I guess it would, yeah. If you
That
could
seems
get
good.
him to
Chill out for just a second.
Alan Dracula too. It's like he maybe
Yeah.
could help you, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want Alan Dracula.
Roll
I feel
the
like I'd be
dice.
too afraid that like something would go wrong. and I'd
Alan
die.
Dracula's high risk, high reward.
Yeah. Yeah.
I picked Tuba. Oh yeah, Tuba.
I forgot about her. She died.
Pick a different one, Melissa.
I think we
No,
can only choose denizens that are still alive.
no, Owen.
I think that was part of
There
the-
was no
it was written
timeline
down thing.
caveat to
They
that
have to be
question.
alive.
They went to the clone car. There was a clone of Tuba.
No.
Maddie, there's
Nope.
no phone car. We never wrote a phone car. There's no phone car. I would choose Nancy because I voiced her and I love pasta.
Yeah. That sounds lovely.
Another question from the audience. The pattern mask that I can't see what it is. Ooh, that's a good question. So the question is, what was the story or the creation of the gallery car? And if the passenger loses the hand with the number, what happens to them?
How did we come up with the docent? Alex had a whole thing where it was like
Yeah.
we found that as we were working on season 4 that we were missing something that was like
We wanted a sort of horrifying
something
episode,
where you
like
feel
a
like
scary one.
terrified and disgusted.
Yeah.
Which has to happen at least once per season. Because otherwise it doesn't feel right.
Had to hit our quota.
And so we were like, oh, it has to be something. And Alex came up with some creature that was like a hooded thing. Where
Yeah,
you,
a shadowy creature that
open up his-
collects hands
Yeah,
from
rolled into
passengers.
like hands dangling, and each one had like different numbers on it, something.
Yeah, and that transformed into the docent we see in the episode.
Yeah.
As for like if, yeah, and that was, I forget how the gallery became the setting specifically, but
I don't know.
I think maybe something about paintings and like shadows coming out of paintings, that sort of
Yeah.
imagery perhaps.
I think it was also, we wanted to do an episode about the theme of like Ryan and Min's different perspectives. And art is like such a, perspective interpretation thing. And so inevitably, because they're such different people, they're going to be seeing different things. And that's why they each come to the realization about the door at different times.
Yes.
That sounds correct. And even if it wasn't, we'd say yes because it sounds very smart.
Yeah. As for the hand getting cut off, I feel like you could still get your exit, but you wouldn't be able to keep track of the number anymore. So you wouldn't know
Yeah, 'cause there's
what
that
your number
one-
is.
The docent has the one hand that has numbers on it,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all like turned off.
Yeah, like they're not working for that hand.
No.
I for sure, some of those people are dead.
Oh yeah.
They lost their arm.
I mean, because the other thing
There's
I
no
think about is
hospital on the train.
that we only show people going forward on the train. What if someone was going backwards? They'd stop. There's that shield thing. You
Yeah.
can't go back in. So if you're trying to go the other direction on the train, I guess you're just out of luck, and you starve outside.
Or
I'm
you
really
wait.
worried about the food situation on the train.
Or you wait until the train car moves. But
True.
yeah, I think you could still get off the train, but you just would have no idea what your number is.
You wouldn't know how close you were or far away at any point.
Yeah.
The apex definitely wouldn't accept you,
That's true.
which is a good thing. Any other questions in the audience? Hat, pattern shirt, pattern mask.
So I know we just talked about that a lot, but what's your favorite canonical death you've written about?
How many times have you pulled the trigger, Owen?
The question is that whenever you ask Owen about a character, just to give some background, he will tell you they've died. If you ask what a character is up to, he will tell you they died. So what death that you've created for one of these poor unfortunate souls is your favorite? That was the question? Okay.
So I'm just going to give you a quick list of how people have died. And the reason that I do this is because I want people to not try to seek me out for these answers. So these are the canonical answers. So if you do not like them, you have to think of something else yourself. That's how it works. First off, Tulip, I believe, capsized in a kayak and drowned. Jesse fell on a table saw. Who we have? Lake lived forever until the earth went away and the sun swallowed her whole. Alan Dracula is not dead. He just lives on the moon. He can't die.
Yeah.
There's nothing, I can't get around that one. Who else do we have? We have,
How did Hazel die?
well, I was gonna get to Hazel because she's my favorite.
Oh, okay. Well, you said who else, so I thought it was
Hazel died because she went into the Inside Out car and she was inside out. And
And
that's
not like the fun Pixar.
no, I mean like what happened to the baboon and the fly. If you remember that, no one does apparently, but you know, it got inside outed. It's sort of just like where your insides become your skin instead, and your skin goes on the inside. And that's what happened to Hazel, and that's my favorite.
Everybody start writing that fan fiction about what happens to people after the train, because otherwise
Yeah, Grace,
it's bad.
Grace and all the Apex died because while Simon was in charge, he installed a bunch of quickstand, and they all
installed.
yeah. It's had to get some bids from contractors, install some quicksand, and I think that's
How did
oh
Atticus
yeah,
die?
Atticus died on the way
that
back.
was an Alex.
That was Alex's decision actually. Yeah, Alex was like he died on the way home, just a pile of broken bones on the side of a
That was
dusty road.
That was not any listeners. That was not any viewers' fault. That was Alex being horrible. And just deciding that Atticus.
But like everybody who dies, they deserve it. So
I just wanted to say about the Atticus thing, like the back and forth that Savon and Gladwin have while Lake is in the pod going to the tape car was basically our real writer's room argument of like, no, he's not dead. Stop saying that. It's like, he's dead.
Yeah, a lot of fights in the writer's room about Atticus being dead. Yep.
sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say the question is, what's going on with the people outside the train that know the people who got on the train?
The same thing that would happen to you if your child disappeared, which is you'd be very unhappy.
Yeah, time moves on, and I think we talked about some story ideas where someone gets on the train and that experience is so traumatic of them going missing in real life that their parent or loved one then gets on the train themselves.
we've talked ourselves into a lot of spirals, very depressing
I think
cycles.
specifically there was like a spin-off in our minds of Michaela getting on the train because her best friend Tulip had gone missing.
And like, yeah, people getting on the train. We had one that was about, I think we had one that was about like generational trauma or something, where it's like someone gets on the train
Well,
that
was,
leads to,
yeah.
and that's the continuing downward thing. Isn't it fun?
Yeah, I think that's something we thought about, especially in the end scenes of the first season, where Tulip is back home and her parents are there, and like there's just sort of a pointed moment of her dad being like, "I'll get her there safely. Like it's not going to happen again." It's sort of the subtext is like she's okay. She can go places. We're not going to lose her like we did last time.
Yeah.
Specifically, that scene happens and the dad says, "Don't worry, I'll get her there," and Tulip's mom just nods, and then in the action I had written, because Tulip was just missing. Do you guys remember that?
It was in the script.
That is in the script. And I'm going, ah!
People have asked, like, why didn't we include when Tulip gets back home and like meets her parents again, all that sort of stuff. It's because it's kind of a downer. we're trying to end it on an up note. It's kind of like why in horror movies you see the person like walk away from the flames, like, I killed him. And then you don't see 2 hours later when the cops show up and they're like, what just happened here? You're going to jail. Like that we never see that part. It's just sort of, you end it in the part where you're like, yay.
If you want that itch scratched, watch Manifest on Netflix.
More good or suffering the world?
Has the train created more good or suffering in the world? That is a very good question.
I feel like I would ask Jigsaw how it worked out for him.
It's hard to say. I think it really depends on who is interacting with the train and what they take away from it.
Yeah.
Because like different people can have the same experience, but take away from it completely different things. So 50-50.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that sound right?
The train is trying to be neutral.
It's trying to be what it thinks is good.
It's good. It's trying to be good. It's just
but you
that
can't
it's not
present a universal blanket answer to what is good for people.
Yeah.
Even though its purpose is like, I'm creating a lot of different scenarios to make sure, I get everybody a good thing.
Yeah, it's impossible in the first place. It's like you can't create a scenario that fits every single person in the universe.
It thinks its intentions are good.
Yeah.
I would say, you guys, what do you think our lives are? Is the world perfect? Do we all learn from it? That's the question.
We generally view the train as like it's.
What do you think Earth is but a car?
The biggest car of them all.
The biggest of them all.
Oh, what was the question? Is Earth a car? Sure.
Yeah, part of the simulation.
Yeah, whatever, sure.
Part of the public transit.
Everything is a train car, and this is why you should not listen to anything that I'm going to say outside of what's canon in the show. Everything's a train car. Everything and any sort of logic holes you find are not real.
I was just thinking about size-wise, because obviously the Earth is pretty big to fit a train car, but we did have an idea for one of the shorts where Tulip was floating in space and talked to an asteroid.
Yeah.
Which, that's a pretty big location.
That's a pretty big location. Yeah, we're sort of like she's floating in space, and then I guess hopefully she finds the door. I guess if you just keep floating in a direction towards where the other door might be.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been great for background.
Yeah, sorry.
Currently?
So what are some sci-fi films and shows we currently enjoy and recommend?
Star Trek.
Yeah, I've been enjoying Star Trek Discovery. I just rewatched Watchmen like a week ago. Not very current, but like, damn, does it feel current?
It's a little older, but I just watched Attack the Block.
Oh, yeah.
First time, yeah, it's really
Attack of
good.
Block rules.
I was almost gonna mention it because it was relevant to something we just said, but I don't want to spoil it.
It does not want you to talk.
This is fantasy, but Alex Horeb watched all of Xena recently.
Oh yeah, Zeta rules.
Xena is fantastic. Xena is such a good show.
Yes. I'm not saying that I love Zeta.
Farscape is great. That's an old
Yes, part of it is that like a lot of these things are like, what are current shows that you're into? It's like we have access to all of time now. So I'm kind of like watching anything from any sort of era. I've been watching a lot of weird 80s movies on Tubi.
You've been watching a lot of Night
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of Night Flight.
Flight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Night Flight's weird. I love it. I love weird stuff.
It's not a show, it's a book series by Becky Chambers, but The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and
Yeah.
the following books
Read
are
that book.
fantastic.
Such
Love
a
them
good
all.
book series. Books. Such a books.
Yep. So,
all
like,
the ones in.
Were there
sorry,
any
go ahead.
denizens that we weren't able to put in the show?
I was gonna say all the ones in book 5. The ones that don't exist. I mean, one of them was there were some puffball people that were fun.
Some pancake people.
Some pancake people that were nice.
And we talked about it before, but there was an alternate version of an episode in season 1
Oh, yeah.
where one gets replaced by a fake version of himself,
By a
by
cowbird.
a giant cowbird.
Yeah. And no one in the
which
writers
would have been
team knew
pretty
what a cowbird
interesting.
was.
That idea sort of morphed into Perry in book 2, actually.
Yeah, and
But
it also turned into Malcar. Like
Yeah,
the pieces
both of
from it
those
turned into other things. There's also a bunch of like there's an army of like potato people.
yeah,
Like
there
a
were
big
little
massive
potato people that filled the
potatoes.
ball.
And like the train door was inside a mannequin's
Yeah.
like torso and it was this big. And we're just like,
It
this
was
is
before
too
we
many
really had the
things.
rules nailed
This is a
down,
lot
but
of
yeah.
things.
Yeah, that was a Malcar in book 1.
Yeah.
And then that was episode 6, and it became the unfinished part.
Yeah.
So we just like totally, that was the first episode that we all worked on as with the writers.
Yeah.
As
That
new
weren't
people
parts of
on
the
the show. Yeah.
beginning, yeah.
And we got the fewest notes on that episode.
Sometimes it works.
Oh, I thought you were gonna pass it. So one last question. Oh, I'm so sorry. Behind you. Yeah. Second row.
Okay, so going down the rabbit hole of basic concepts, would it be possible for someone to, like, I guess, track these things or try to, like, let's say someone used their friend as bait. They know the friend is like extremely well. They have a camera and the string to the sun. Would it just let out or we can train out here? Train out.
So the question is, and actually we have talked about this. Is it possible for somebody to lure the infinity train to try to trap it and prove its existence?
We
Right.
might have had a season where that was
Yeah.
what we were going to do.
That
I'm
was-
sorry.
But yeah,
I'm sorry.
but yeah, I think
The answer is that was an entire season.
that was going to be a whole season. that was
yeah, it's interesting to think about just because like the reasons and methodology behind the train showing up for someone
Yeah.
are kind of ambiguous, but Jesse is able to get the train
Yes.
to come back to him so he can get like,
But he doesn't do it on purpose.
he doesn't do it on purpose, but I think if you like needed it enough, because it shows up to people in need under very specific circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think if your life was going to fall apart if you didn't catch this infinity train, I think it might show up.
And if you go into it with a plan, I think it still wouldn't matter because it's still such a big, important thing that you're looking for and needs to be part of your life.
Yeah.
Even if you go into it with like a plan on what you're going to do to get this train, you still really needed it. So it would still show up.
And in book 4, we showed that multiple people can see the train.
Yes.
It's not just the one person.
Yeah. And then.
Well, I guess we didn't show
no,
other
not in-
people. You're right. We didn't show other people beyond
no,
Ryan
in-
and Min
in-
seeing it.
Yeah. In book 4, we specifically made it so it was just an empty train car.
It shows up in a mall for Grace. and
Yeah, but
nobody
she's still the
notices
only-
it, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean, but
Um,
I don't think the train,
as far as if a camera, if you put like a GoPro on somebody, I feel like no, you would not. The person streaming, the stream would be cut off.
Yeah.
The camera would still work as you're going through, I think. But I think that any sort of broadcast between the two. That's a great question. Thank you for your question.
You're good to think about it. I was thinking about like, what if you were able to manifest it in front of a giant crowd of people, and then it's like, look at this train, everybody. I don't know.
Peace.
Yeah, I think you could maybe trap it. I don't know how you'd stop it. I guess
We'd
you just
figure
wouldn't
it
get on.
It was a whole season. It was a whole season the way we planned to do this. We would have figured it out better than what we're doing right now.
cool, that was our final question. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.